You boys look like a weird heavy metal band.
Yes, we are a band.
Really?
Yeah.
So what do you play?
Symphonic, post-apocalyptic, reindeer-grinding, Christ-abusing, extreme war, pagan, Fennoscandic metal.
Right. Really interesting.
Atlanta called. There's a situation back in the States.
Where? You're kidding.
How long has it been since you were home?
A while.
We don't know what this is yet. The hospital is on it 24/7, and the CDC.
My name is Dr. Abby Arcane. My team is here to find the source of this disease.
You saw the body. Dealt with anything like that before?
Who are you again?
Holland.
Alec Holland was investigating illegal dumping on the swamp.
Hello?
Dr. Jason Woodrew.
The CDC's in town. There's no way that my accelerant is responsible.
There's this poison coming off the swamp.
You should be dead! There's been a shift in the balance of the light and the dark. Something's out there.
We're dealing with something beyond the known scope of science.
I need it alive to study.
There's all kinds of awful that happens in this swamp.
There's something special about this place.
There's so much unimaginable beauty out there, Abby.
The swamp's had enough. This is payback.
All right, there you see it. DJ Nubis here with you on the Military Radio Podcast, doing a series review for Swamp Thing 2019. Just saw the trailer there that came out beforehand, and I was a little late to the party for this. I remember when it was advertised, but I think at the time it was only on it might have been on one of the networks, but we didn't have the particular network, and I know when I went to the DC app, we didn't have that. We had Disney, but not that one. So, the history with me with, Swamp Thing really goes back to the early 80s with the first couple movies they did, Swamp Thing and Return of the Swamp Thing. And both those movies kind of remind me a little bit of the Conan films early in those years, because the original Swamp Thing movie, I don't have all the cast of characters outside of Adrienne Barbeau who was in that, but that first movie was a lot darker than the sequel with Heather Locklear, which was more comedic. And I always preferred the first one far more than the second one, but that was kind of like my only introduction to the Swamp Thing. I didn't even know really until later on, that was a comic book character. And I never really followed it much in terms of the product itself. I mean, I know they had another series in the late 80s or early 90s that they did. I never watched that one. But I remember seeing this trailer when this came out, thinking and hearing all the people talking about who did watch it, said it was really good, really dark, got back to the more kind of like horror element of the Swamp Thing and everything like that. The creators for this, I think James Wan had a hand in the producing of it, but the creators of this series is Gary Doberman and Mark Verheiden. And it's kind of weird because like Gary Doberman has worked on stuff like the Nun series, movie series, Annabelle, which I didn't really care for a lot of those. Like I've seen a few of them in those particular movie series, and I didn't really like them all that much. But then Mark Verheiden, who worked on stuff like the original Time Cop series, Ash vs. the Evil Dead, the Daredevil series, and Hemlock Grove, those are all solid installments of those franchises. So I'm kind of impressed with that particular guy as far as one of the creators of the show. The cast in this is loaded with a lot of familiar faces. Now, obviously, our main heroine, Crystal Reed, who plays Abby Arcane, super lovely looking girl there, but she doesn't have much work in the way of movies or anything, mostly just TV series, but she does a fantastic job in this as Abby Arcane. But then we have Virginia Madsen, who plays Maria Sutherland. She's been in movies like Candyman and what's the other one? The Prophecy with Christopher Walken. Andy Bean, who's been in some stuff, not very big familiar face, but he plays Alec Holland, who slashed the Swamp Thing, which we'll get into. Will Patton, one of my favorite actors of all time, who's been in stuff like Armageddon, Gone in 60 Seconds, Remember the Titans, and then the revamped Halloween trilogy. He plays Avery Sunderland. Jennifer Beals, which I didn't recognize at first in this at all, but that kind of brings a smile to Neko's face because she was the big star in one of her favorite movies, Flashdance, back in the day. Four Rooms, The Grudge 2. She plays Cecilia Cable in this. Kevin Durant, he's a known quantity of a person, actor. He's been in X-Men Origins. He's in the new Abigail film, which is due to come out. Might be out now, I'm not sure. 310 to Yuma, and then Smoking Aces. He places Jason Woodrue, who's like a scientist working with Avery Sutherland to try. And just quick on Durant's character, Jason, his wife has Alzheimer's. So one of the reasons why he's been working on this, formula in the swamp to try to get something to cure his wife. So that's his big motivation here. Ian Ziering, if you all know this name, he starred as one of the main characters in 90210, the series way back when. Kind of got a reboot into movies when the Sharknado stuff came out. He's been a big staple in those movies as well. He plays a guy named Daniel Cassidy, also / Blue Devil, who again is another part of the comic world with that Swamp Thing, I guess, but I don't know much about it. But interesting character, needless to say. And then we have a good cameo, Adrienne Barbeau. I was really excited when I saw her in the film, in the series, and so really happy to see that her playing a part of that. So I'm just going to break down a little bit, what the series details, what it's kind of all about. I'm going to play a little bit of video in the background as I talk about it, so you guys can enjoy that a little bit. It's a little dark because just kind of how the show is. It's all kind of moody and atmospheric. But yeah, so basically the plot here is Abby Arcane returns home to Morass, Louisiana to investigate a deadly swamp-borne virus, only to discover that the dark, terrifying mysteries of the swamp. So it's kind of vague there with the details. But yeah, so we kind of saw in the trailer this young girl. She ends up getting like a bloody nose, and that's a young actress who's playing this character, Susie Coils, and they're kind of battling this virus that's been breaking out in Louisiana there, and they've been trying to find out what it is. And Alec Holland, who plays a sort of a scientist that was working with Avery Sutherland for a while, and then got fired or left. And he's found that there's a different connection with what's going on in the swamp. And it has nothing to do with like a deadly virus per se. Like right now, the swamp has what's equivalent to like an evil presence. And so that's sort of what's infecting people. But it's very weird how this, I don't know the details of how the science works in this. I've only watched this once. I binge watched it all. Uh, but Abby Arcane, she found a way to kind of push back on the virus to reverse it a little bit. Something they didn't realize. The other scientists were really upset because they were trying to do things to fight the virus, but it was actually making people like become sicker and die. She was actually feeding into it, and what happened was that people would get better once you did that. Instead of fighting it, you were just allowing it to take over the body. You wouldn't change too much or anything like that, but for whatever reason, by not fighting the virus, it was helping people get better. So yeah, so Abby gets there and she's a scientist, obviously, so she's trying to figure things out, and basically hooks up with Alec. Alec kind of just inserts himself into the hospital. He's not supposed to be there. He gets kicked out a couple times. But he tells her, he was like, look, you're looking in the wrong places for this. You know, you need to talk to me when you can. So he finally does. And so they kind of start this friendship of working together to try and determine what's going on with the swamp. He's been showing her some things. They go to a house where Susie Coles lives. Her dad actually ends up becoming, as you saw in the trailer, kind of like a part of the bathroom, where he's like almost like the branches and everything are ingrown into him, and he's like almost a part of the house. And so we find that the swamp is sort of come alive, and you see like in this little clips here that they're like evil looking people, and these are things that the evil part of the swamp are creating out of. And the thing is, it can kind of play off people's memories. So what ends up happening is Alec is in the swamp late at night, and he's trying to find some more samples and stuff, but ends up getting shot, and he falls into the water. And then we see him as the swamp sort of just envelops him, and he becomes Swamp Thing there. The interesting thing is that when that happens, your memories are kind of still there, because we find out later on that Alec as a human is pretty much dead. We always, he's just gone. But the Swamp Thing has those memories. It's just plants. It's like a plant that's incorporated itself into a human being because of that memory of Alec. And so that's what it was doing. And, there's some tension towards the end where Swamp Thing has these memories. So he's kind of like bummed out and depressed, because he's like, what am I if I'm not human? Like, he was hoping to get human again. That was sort of what Abby's goal was, to try to reverse the effects. But when it was Jason Woodrue who had captured Swamp Thing to try to dissect him, realized and found out exactly what he was, and he wasn't human at all. Just everything was plant-based, even the heart and all this other stuff. So there was no like fluids or anything else going on through his body. And of course, throughout a lot of this, we see how Swamp Thing has to fight against the attackers who are trying to capture him, because that's part of what Avery's and Jason Woodrue's plan is try to figure out this cure that they're going to use for immortality and to fight off disease and infection. So, Swamp Thing's constantly fighting an uphill battle to discover who he is, what his purpose is, and of course, people trying to capture him for nefarious reasons. And anyway, there's also a lot of like side things going on here. We have some corruption with the sheriff and her son that gets discovered, and then just random crazy shit. But the thing is, like, even when the Swamp Thing is attacking his attackers, some of the kill scenes are pretty cool. One of the pros in this is the atmosphere that the scenes, the cinematic shots look like, the special effects, a little bit of gore, good usage of the CGI. Like it's good enough that it's not doesn't look really bad. Like it works well with how they're shooting everything. Well acted, obviously a lot of great actors in here. Well acted series, and a solid storyline. I mean, it's not groundbreaking. I mean, they're just using basically a good premise for a virus that's been attacking the locals, and they're working off of that. But it's kind of interesting how they incorporate memories into the infection and everything else, because that kind of plays into this hallucinatory reaction by some of the people that get infected. And so they, there's one moment where this older black guy from one of Abby's childhood friends is owner of a local cafe, and he like gets infected, and he has a shotgun. He's ready to shoot whoever, but he's seeing one thing. He's seeing something from his past, like an old robbery, but it's actually just an illusion. And there's his daughter and everyone else around trying to get him to calm down. Finally, they subdue him, and of course knock him out, and then he gets better when they clean up the infection. But it just shows you that he could have shot anybody and it wouldn't have been what he thought it was. So that's sort of shit that plays a part. Now there's also some backstory with Abby. As a youngster, was best friends with Avery and Maria's daughter. I forget her name, Shauna, I think it is. And there was a tragedy when they were younger where Shauna and her were getting ready to graduate high school. They were best friends. And, there's this moment where they're both in the river. And at first, Shauna was kind of playing like she was drowning, because it was kind of like a joke. She got pushed off of the bridge by Abby, because Abby didn't really want to do anything, but Shauna was saying, we got to cut loose, it's senior year, yada, yada. And I guess Shauna was more like the reckless teenage girl, rich girl. And so, Abby was a little bit reluctant at the beginning. Then she pushed her off. And then when Shauna didn't come up, she panicked and jumped in after her. And then, of course, Shauna was playing a joke, but then something takes her beneath the water, and she's gone. And so this led to this tragedy now between Abby, who then moved on, left to go to medical school and stuff, but Maria Sutherland, the mother, just very much, because they were all close. Like Abby was a good part of that family as well. So, but when that tragedy happened, Maria was very bitter and angry at Abby about it. And so Abby shows back up, and there's some tension there. Like, Maria knows that she's there to try to find a cure for this virus that's out there. But she's like, once you're done, I want you out of this town. Like, I don't want you to come back. Like, there's just real anger there. And so there's this tension between the two of them. But of course, you have Avery, who is like the rich guy who helps everybody, but it's all like, it's all done in, you owe me more than I owe you. So he does things that causes problems, but then he comes in and plays the hero, even though he was the one that was the root of those problems. So he's pretty nefarious. Will Patton really plays the villain great in this. And it's so good. Obviously, towards the end of the series, they did an okay job wrapping it up for what it was. I don't know if they ever thought they would get canceled after one season or not. I'm kind of disappointed because to me, this series had a lot of promise. Like when you think of all the series that are on Netflix or whatever that kind of are bombing out and not, they get like, look at fucking, what was it? Is it the Lord of the Rings things, the one on Prime? Like, I don't know. Some of these series that don't even really deserve second seasons or third seasons are getting them when they're just not that good. And it just, I don't want to go into the whole woke thing, but like this series doesn't have any of that bullshit. It just wants to tell a story, and it wants to tell it well. And it's interesting because I saw a clip from Asmongold recently about Christopher Nolan, and Nolan was somebody asked him a question about how he approaches films and whether or not he inserts his own politics and his beliefs into those films. He says no. He says, I believe everybody should have their own viewpoints on politics, and it should mean something to you politically, whatever it is. But he says, when I go into movies, I go to tell a story, and even if there's some political themes, it's not really based on anything I believe. It's just how the story unfolds, and he leaves it more of like an interpretation from the viewer on how that is done. And that's one thing that I've always been pushing the last couple of years in terms of filmmaking and TV series. And when we talk about diversity, inclusiveness, you can have all that, but you have to have a good story and have that stuff be kind of secondary, just kind of like in support of that story, that great story. And so if you're making that your primary objective and the story isn't very strong, it's not going to hold up. But in this case, like, you have plenty of diversity in this series, plenty of it. And it's strong, and you got strong characters, and it's a strong story. Why it didn't get another season, I don't really know. I think because this was 2019, maybe COVID had a part of that. I don't know. You would think that with COVID, people being at home, that this would have been something that would have caught a little more fire. Could be a problem. Like I said, I don't remember where it started. I don't know if it was on regular TV at first or it went straight to the DC app, because the problem is, I know that whenever like Disney puts out a new series, you either have to subscribe to the Disney app to watch it, or you don't get to see it until, like, right now. This was on DC's app, and now we're in 2024. It just now pops up on Tubi, of all places. So maybe, and I'm hoping people that might be interested in this series will go and check it out and try to push them to kind of go back and continue this, because maybe Netflix, which is usually one of the more general audiences, will subscribe to, or even if it's Prime or whatever. I think if you can get people to kind of get back behind this, it will have some potential to go forward, even if it's only for a couple more seasons. It'd be nice to see, because it's closed up enough to where it's not really going to hurt if it never does happen. But at the same time, there's still some openings there for more shit to happen, and I think that's a good thing. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. Are you guys seen this series? Are you interested in it? Hit me up in the comments, man. I want to know your thoughts, where you stand on this, how you felt about it. And yeah, I think that going forward, just they need to do some more with this. There were some things that I thought were a little bit uneven in this. One of the things I was going to point out was Susie Coyle's the young girl. She's in like 5 of the episodes. She's kind of a strong presence in the first part of the series, but then just kind of disappears. You never really hear from her again, which is weird. You would think that she would still kind of pop up here and there or something, but maybe if they had done another scene, she might have played another factor in that. I don't know. But she just kind of disappears, and you're kind of like wondering whatever the fuck happened to her, because she was such a main part of the storyline going into the first half of it. Yeah, let me know your thoughts, man. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate all the support you can give us here at Metal Tavern. And I'll see you next time. I think tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, me and Neko will be joining Kevin Lambert at Entertainment Headquarters to do a review for Predator. If you're a Predator fan, I know a lot of people are. It was actually a user voting pick when Lambert and I were last doing Conan, I think it was. We came up with the idea just to have people. He was going to create a poll of some movies, and people voted on what they wanted to have, and that was the one they wanted to see us review the most. Which is so funny, because so many reviews out there, Predator, especially reaction people from people first time seeing it or on YouTube, but it shows you how long this movie has had such staying power, that people still want to see more and more comments and discussions on it. And I know that if you saw Prey, that came out a couple years ago on Hulu, they're working on a couple sequels for that. So yeah, maybe that's why the interest is still there. And then Neko and I will be doing a review for Velvet Goldmine, old flick with Ewan McGregor, Christian Bale, and Jonathan Rhys Meyers. A pretty interesting film, needless to say, but I think is well acted and really cool. But we'll talk about that. And then let me see, what else do I have on the palette here? I forget. What do I have here? Oh, we have an unboxing to do. We're going to do that. And I know coming up, I got another species spotlight. I'm going to work on the the pink toe tarantula that I have. And so I'm going to continue that series going on. And then, like I said, I will eventually get the en bloc review for another Lone Wolf with Dub. If you haven't caught the one I just did for Firecracker, check it out. And yeah, man, I'll have the top 5 metal releases next week as well, and keep you updated on all that stuff musically. See you next time on the Metal Time Radio Podcast.